Hello everybody and welcome back to the weekly What's Up with Wigwam. As always, I'm your host with Wigwam, and this is the almost never weekly show. Today I'm going to explain why I have been gone for almost a month from doing these. It's because I've been working on a movie set. That's what I do for my full-time job, in case a couple of you still don't know that. I do a variety of different things on set, basically whatever they'll hire and give me money to do. Typically what I do is a lot of PA work, which is production assistant, so it's kind of like a catch-all, low on the totem pole, basic easy job, but I'm working my way up, and I've had a couple of other various jobs in the industry, so I thought it would be fun to take a suggestion from a good friend of mine, the Sick Boy Lounge. You should check him out, links down below, and answer a couple of questions that people have about working in the movie industry, because while most of the movies I've worked on are pretty small indie movies, they have decent multi-million-dollar budgets, which is small in the realm of movies, but enough that I think I could answer a lot of your basic question about how movies are made, some behind-the-scenes stuff. So I took questions on Discord and Twitter, and now I'm gonna answer them, and a couple of ones that I'm gonna throw in myself because they're the questions that I always get asked by other people. So we're gonna answer all those questions. Should be a good time. Let's get into it. Our first question up comes from Brandon Tech Kid on Discord. Brandon asked, on set, is the food prop or is it genuinely food when food is in a scene? This is a great question. The answer is actually a little bit of both. You see, it's usually real food, like it's real edible food in the beginning of the scene, but what happens is that you're filming scenes for a minimum of like 45 minutes to an hour is a quick scene, and even then that may just be one camera setup. So you may have tons, like 100 background in a cafeteria with full plates of food in front of every single one of them, and while it's all real food, you wouldn't want to eat any of it. It's not heated up, it's not cooked, it's probably even maybe got paint on it or something to preserve it throughout the day if it's going to be a really long shoot and they don't want to keep replacing it. So while it's technically real food, it's not real edible. It kind of turns into a prop. Next up, we have a question from Ultra, also on Discord. He asked, how many takes does it take to get the scene right? This is a very variable answer because it depends on the complexity of the scene and how much time you're willing to spend on it. A normal talking dialogue scene is typically the hardest. You'll get it from like usually 3 to 5 separate angles in one scene, and each of those takes, typically, I would say you always do like 2 to 3 takes minimum. You always kind of have one take just as rehearsal. Even if the first take is amazing and damn near perfect, the director is gonna say those magical words that you always hear on set, one more for safety, and he'll usually do another take. Usually though, you don't get it right on the first try, sometimes not even on the second try, so I would say a minimum of average shot is 3. If you're doing something really crazy complex with like stunts, it may have to happen in one. Scenes like in Mad Max where they're blowing up cars, scenes like in The Dark Knight where they have to blow up a hospital, there are certain shots that you only get one take on, and the way they do that is they'll rehearse it sometimes for days. There's a great scene from a show called, I think it's called Happy, where they do this incredible one take shot where everything in the room is changing, and it's showing this girl going from being a drug addict to getting her life back in order. And what they were doing was they had like 10 stagehands flying in behind the camera, moving tables, removing walls, putting up new furniture and shades and everything. So they said they got that scene in about 2 or 3 takes, I believe, but what they also said was it took them about 2 or 3 days of rehearsals to get that scene just right. They were practicing day in, day out. They had the camera out there, they had the cameraman practicing his movements, they had everybody practicing their motions, their steps behind them. So it's a lot and a lot of practice that goes in behind the scenes before it even gets to the part where you're actually filming it. Alright, next up I have a couple different questions from my friend Nicholas Worley. He asked me on Twitter. Nick asked, what are the different career paths? Different career paths, there's so many individual jobs. I'll just try and break down a couple of the different departments, because if I were to break down every job that I know of in the film industry, this video would be an hour long. The different career paths: you could work in the sound department, you could work in grip and electric, which are the people who put up C-stands and hang lights and put up generators and make sure the scene is lit. You could work in the camera department, where you're either operating a camera, helping swap out lenses, or even being the director of photography, who has a huge impact. That's my number one pet peeves on movies, by the way, is that directors of photography have huge visual impacts on movies. Like for Wes Anderson, he's used the same DP in every one of his movies. That's one of the reasons why his movies have that signature Wes Anderson look, and they get no credit. DPs are so to thank for so many of your favorite movies, and nobody gives them the credit they deserve. You could obviously be a director. The assistant director path is also very viable. That's mostly like management of crew and stuff. You could work with background. You could be a casting coach. You could be a producer. You could work in crafty. You could work in transportation. You could work in show cars, where you literally just provide show cars. There are so many different specialized jobs in film. Nick also asked, how high up are you on the totem pole? Usually pretty low, but that vastly depends on the film I'm working on. Most of my paid work, very low, because I'm very new to the industry. I've only been doing this professionally full-time for less than a year at this point. But on some indie stuff, I've gone as high as assistant director, and I plan on directing my own short film very soon. So again, it just depends on the job. Every job is different. It depends on what people get hired into. Even people that I've worked with who are directors or DPs or even assistant directors may work on a really high budget, high caliber AAA movie. They may get knocked down to like a PA level, which is what I work on the movies with them. So everything can change from job to job. It just depends on who's offering, what the money is. It just depends. Name one job in the movie industry that really shouldn't be its own separate job. This is a really interesting question because, again, it's variable. Every answer here is variable. So there is no specific job that shouldn't exist. It depends on the set. For larger sets, you need specific people doing very specific jobs. On smaller sets, you can combine different jobs into one. I've worked sets where there's just one crafty person, but on other sets, you may need 5 crafty people to provide food and snacks to all of the crew. Your set may only need 2 people who work in grip and electric, or you may work on a movie that needs 10 or 20 people to work in grip and electric. So it's not that there's any one job that doesn't need to exist, it's just that relative to the size of your set, you may need more or less people in a certain department and with certain specialized skills. Misconceptions about working on a movie set. I would say maybe a couple things that people don't know. Your average film crew works a minimum of a 12-hour shoot day, and it's not totally unusual if it's a poorly run show, which is a lot of them, that you may be working for 14, 15, 17-hour days. The longest day I've ever personally put in was 20 hours, which was because I had to wake up early, take our work truck into the shop, get it fixed, show up the set, and then stay late because I was in locations, so I had to break down and clean up the location after the crew left. So the longest I've worked is 20 hours. Other misconceptions, you don't really just spend all your time taking pictures with movie stars. It's super uncool to, like, in the middle of your job when you're working with someone, to be like, hey, can I get a picture with you? I mean, you want to, of course, when you work with certain people, but you're on a job with them. You are technically their coworker, even if you're 5 steps below them. It's just not a very professional thing to do. Movies aren't shot chronologically. Movies are shot basically by location, and even then, within that location, sometimes not chronologically. It more depends on the actors' schedules and availability. You might need 5 actors for this scene in this location, and 3 for this scene in that location, so you may have to film all the scenes with the 3 of them on one day, and all the scenes with the 5 of them on the next day. There's so many factors involved in scheduling a movie, but filming it chronologically is pretty much never, ever a factor. And the most fun aspect of working in the industry, for me, it's always doing something different and getting to create something new every single day. I don't like jobs that are like the same thing day in and day out. I need variety in my life, so for me, one of the things that most drew me to the film industry was that I never know where I'm gonna film, what locations it's gonna take me to, even with just the jobs I've worked locally. In my last movie, I filmed in a dorm room at a college campus, all over the college campus for classrooms and stuff. Then we went to a mansion, frat house party. The movies before that, we've been to out in the country. We filmed out like in national parks. I've filmed out in I filmed all over the place. I have filmed in all sorts of various locations. I'm excited to keep filming in various different locations. Alright, and then finally up we have Joel asked me a couple questions through Discord. Thank you, Joel. Joel asked, is there any sort of competition on set? I would say, of course there is. Typically with what I've seen, it's mostly friendly competition. I think in any competitive career, which is most careers really, there's some sort of competition, but we try to keep it friendly. Within my industry, I would say, to give a specific example, as a PA, usually it's who can answer those calls the quickest when they're like, hey, we need someone to bring this, hey, we need someone to do this, do someone to that. So there's always a little competition to try and be like the first one on the walkie. This is where your walkie is, by the way. You're always attached to a walkie. You're like, got it, copy, I'll do it, whatever. So there's always some friendly competition. I've never really encountered any, like, backstabbing, corporate espionage style competition yet. But it's a job. Any job, I think, brings a bit of competition, and it just depends on the person, how far they're gonna take it. How much networking is happening on set? So much. So very much, dude. People are constantly on set. What do you do? What have you done? What other jobs do you do? What specialties are you in? Oh, would you want to help me out on my short film? Oh, I'd love to help you out on your short film. Oh, I've got a job coming up. I need a grip to work it. Would you like that job? It's just like all day and night. It's just constantly like that. And when you leave, you want to have those contacts in your pocket, because we all work freelance. We don't work for a specific company. I think that's another misconception I could go over. I don't work for any specific company, even though I mainly work for one production company when they're making movies. I'm not directly an employee of them. I'm brought on as a freelance hire for the duration of the movie, and that's for everybody. DPs, directors, the electricians, the assistant directors. None of us are real employees of production companies. Only the producers work directly for the production company. Everybody else is just hired on. So in between these movies, even if we have a good repertoire with one specific production company, we gotta fill in our own schedule in between those movies. So we're totally freelance. So networking is an essential part of the job. How much does morale on set actually affect the product? So very much, dude. I mean, you gotta think about it even just from, like, the actors is the most obvious one. If an actor needs to film a really happy, upbeat scene and they're miserable and they've been there for 15 hours and you're like, all right, go out there and be alive and awake and you're super jazzed about this thing that's happening, they're gonna be like, all right, whatever, fucking, yeah, all right, cool, woo, neato. You know, it's very condition dependent. And that goes for everybody. You know, your lighting department, how quickly are you gonna work? How quickly are people motivated to do a good job? How good of a job are people motivated to do? How many hours do you work on average? I already answered this, so basically 12 is the minimum average, and it could go up to 14 on a typical movie set. Crappy movie set or a crappy position on a movie set could take you even past 14, 15, 16, 17 hours. It gets crazy. But some commercial jobs, easier jobs, could be as little as like 9 hours a day, which is great when that eventually happens. What are some unwritten rules for movie sets? I.e. something like don't piss off the sound guy, don't piss off the crafty people, do not ever anger the people that serve you food, don't make the AD mad because he controls your schedule, and do not make the food people mad. Those are two people you do not ever want to make mad on a movie set because they control your life. And then who has the best job on set? Well, that generally depends on what you want to do. I know plenty of people in different departments who are very happy in those departments that I would never ever want to work in. I would never want to do sound, but I know plenty of sound guys who love their job and think it's a great job. I'm not much of an editor either. I don't really enjoy editing for really long periods of time, which is weird since I do this whole YouTube thing, but I wouldn't want to be a full-time editor. I don't mind part-time editing, but full-time editing would drive me crazy if that was all I was doing. If I was doing no other production work and just editing videos, I would probably quit. I'd be miserable. So it depends on what you want to do. My best job on set would be director. That's what I eventually want to do. Or even assistant director or director of photography. Those are the 3 jobs and positions that I'm most interested in film, but again, it just depends on what your personal likes and dislikes are. Finally, I'm just going to answer a couple of questions that I can think of that I usually get asked. First one is always, how did you get into this? Well, I used to shoot YouTube videos. Imagine that. Way back in the day, we filmed some sketches, and we knew some people who had actually filmed professionally, so we got them to come help us with our sketches. Once I got a taste of how professional film work was done, I asked them to let me get on set with them, work a job with them, volunteer for them really in the beginning. It was a lot of free, unpaid labor. And I just decided that I loved it more and more every time I got to experience it. So that's kind of how I got in love with the industry. Another question I always get asked is, who are the most famous people you've met and were they nice? That's what everybody wants to know. The good news is almost every large name star I've met is super nice. Most actors are actually really nice people in general. You have a couple of divas, it's inevitable that you run into them, and the bad ones give the rest of them a terrible name, but honestly, for the most part, most actors are great. I've met Will Forte, incredibly kind and funny guy and fantastic at his job. He busted out those scenes just like that. It was the smoothest day on that movie we had on set when he was working with us. I've also met Charlie Tahan, another great, actually really nerdy guy. He's from Ozark. Super nice guy. Got to talk with him quite a bit when we worked on a movie together, and he was great. And that's pretty much it. That's all the questions I got. If you have any more questions that I didn't cover, you can go ahead and leave them down below in the comments. I'm happy to do a few more follow-up questions in the comments down below. But as always, I've been Wigwam. Thank you for joining me for the weekly What's Up with Wigwam. There will be another one of these, probably not next week, because of course there won't be, but whenever I have time and I'm back from my next job, which is going to happen very soon, I will make another one. So if you have any ideas or questions you'd like to ask me for a future weekly What's Up, let me know down below. And as always, I love your beautiful faces. They're gorgeous, you're gorgeous, and I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful week, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye! Click a link, watch another video, watch the streams. Give me $1,000 on Patreon. 5,000, 6,000, 7, 8, no, 20,000. $20,000 on Patreon. First person to give me $20,000 on Patreon gets my bathwater. Gets Gamer Guy bathwater, $20,000 Patreon tier. Act now, there's only one available. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention Patreon subscribers. Cassie, Joel, Nick, you guys are literally the greatest people, and I love you so much, and you support this channel so much. Thank you guys so very much for supporting my Patreon. I love your beautiful faces again. Bye-bye.